All right. Hello, my sweet friends. Welcome back to another little astro window. We have a super special guest today, my very, very dear friend, Bo Wong, who is also my business mentor. And we're doing it's been a fantastic little collab. I'm Bo's astrologer and she's my business mentor. And we thought we'd do something fun today. How you doing, Bo?
I'm doing good, thank you. Great to see you, Mono.
See you too, Bono. We thought that we would do something a little bit different today because we're moving into this really, kind of dense and rich and pointy and deep and powerful portal of time astrologically. And Venus is stationing retrograde on the weekend. We also have Mars and Saturn in this really tight opposition this weekend, and then a grand cardinal cross on Saturday when the nodes of fate move into Aries or they've already moved into Aries and Libra, but then the Sun and Pluto make an opposition. So this weekend is really big and really powerful. And I'm already getting messages from people on various platforms talking about what an intense week it is. So we thought that we would just explore some of this, break down a bit of the magic and the poetry, and look at Bo's chart and talk about how we can see some of these things playing out in a real person's chart and what we can do with it, how we can work with it. What are your
And
thoughts?
I just thought I'd also mention that I am a total astrology newbie. So I'll be asking all the dumb questions
Not dumb questions.
so that, other people can also, if they're newbies, they'll be grateful.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yes, because you all know me. I do talk that I love the poetry of the old language, but of course,
Mm.
those who have minds who want to understand everything, like I did initially too, like you're like, what the hell does this mean? It's so confusing. So really, just let it wash over you. Listen for those questions, and just absorb whatever resonates. Yeah, some of it hopefully will make sense and will sink deep beneath the skin. Anything that doesn't make sense, yeah, just let it wash over.
Can I ask just a first question before we start?
Please.
Um, I wanted to know, there's been a bit of talk about Venus retrograde, and I wondered, we'd sort of spoken before and saying, oh, it gets a bit of a bad rap or this or that. And I wanted to know, what are the dates, like how long is it going to go for? And
Absolutely.
what would you say is like the core kernel thing that happens in this time?
Yeah, great. Excellent questions. So, first of all, Venus is the planet that we kind of commonly associate in modern astrology with love, relationships, beauty, art, money, abundance, peace, diplomacy. All the kind of the nice things, that's Venus, right? She's the goddess of love and sensuality. In the ancient world, she was a much more complex figure. She's been really kind of, there's a real sort of sacralization that's happened with Venus in the modern world, which is no accident given the place of women in the last, couple of thousand years. But previously, she was one of the most powerful gods in the ancient pantheon. And she was associated with all those things that I just mentioned, but also with political power, with divine law, and with war. In the ancient world, she was considered to be such an important planet because she's the brightest planet in our skies. And she also does this really interesting thing, which is much more prominent for her because she is the brightest planet in our solar system, the most beautiful and brightest. But she does this shifting thing where she moves from the phase of being an evening star, where she's just so bright and so beautiful, and then she just completely turns backwards and starts moving back in the sky, which all the planets do, but for her it's very dramatic. And then she just vanishes for a month, completely disappears. And then after a month, she emerges again as the morning star. So the ancient people had this, like, they were the astronomers were also astrologers most of the time. And so they paid a lot of close attention to the mathematical, astronomical nature of the planets, what they were doing, but they also correlated it with what was happening on Earth. And they developed a mythology developed around Inanna. So she was known as Inanna in Mesopotamia and Sumer 6,000 years ago. And by 4,000 years ago, the oldest epic poem that we have in the world was The Descent of Inanna. and it describes her transition, the transition of Venus from evening star to morning star, and that period, what happens when she disappears. So the ancient astrologers thought that when Venus disappears, she descends down into the underworld, a place of death, to visit her sister, and she does not have good intentions when she goes down to visit her sister for her brother-in-law's funeral. She's actually wanting to take her sister's territory. She's the most powerful goddess already, but she's like, it's not enough for me. I think I should be the queen of the underworld as well as the queen of heaven. But she gets her just desserts. Ultimately, the Descent of Inanna is a story about justice, injustice, and hubris, but it has a whole lot of other really fascinating and complex themes. And I'm going to do a special video on this later, but just in a nutshell, it deals with those themes I just touched on: injustice, responsibility, justice, hubris, overstepping one's bounds, but also things like loyalty, allies, grief, loss. What happens to Inanna when she descends to the underworld? She thinks it's going to be easy. She's so powerful that she's like, this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm just going to take what's mine. But she's judged guilty immediately upon entry. First of all, she's forced to strip all of her power off at every gate of the underworld. There are 7 gates. Strips her power off, arrives at her sister's throne naked and bowed low, and the judges of the dead judge her guilty and kill her. And they hang her on a meat hook for 3 days. So she,
Perhaps.
yes,
Jeez, that was dark times.
dark times. And that is why the Venus retrograde has a bad rap. One of the reasons why, and also because it is often associated with reversals. So something that you think is going to happen does not happen suddenly, or something that seemed to be going well will go backwards. It can happen the other way too, that something that seems to be going very badly can turn around and go well. People from the past often come out of the blue. It's sort of famously in pop astrology associated with breakups or exes coming back, with experiences of betrayal, because Inanna betrays her sister. So sistership issues of sisterly thing, but also lovers. It can be associated, especially because it's happening in Leo, which is the sign of the heart, of artistic expression, of performance and creativity, self-expression, playfulness, and children. Already the topics of mothering and childbirth are involved in that mythology as well, because Inanna's sister Ereshkigal is pregnant and gives birth in the myth, and Leo being the sign of children, those kinds of topics can be activated as well, but also aspirations, ambitions, this sense of like who we're trying to be in the world, what is ours, what is other people's, what is out of balance, what needs to be rectified, and this period of like descending inward to really reflect deeply on where we're at with all of those things and where we want to be and what has to die off inside ourselves or externally, either by our own kind of choosing and consideration or by what is happening in our lives, that they sort of tend to be reversals and endings.
Yeah, I can see that sort of, it is a bit of a bad, like letting go, like this idea of transition, the idea of like that, the discomfort of letting go of something, moving into something else. It hurts sometimes, and there can be grief, and maybe that's, I guess, what you're talking about, this idea of, why it gets a bad rap, but because it's all of these things that sound super important: lovers, sisters, children, art.
Money, ambition, career, all those things, leadership.
Yeah. So just all the things that are important, all here.
Bang, 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 bang. Welcome.
Also loved hearing this idea of like this going underground, because that for me, I'm just like, that is digging off big time for me. I feel like I am so deep underground at the moment, digging into this sort of space of partly the unconscious, but also my past. Yes. I'm sort of forced there, and I wouldn't have probably been here of my own choosing in a sense, but I also feel like that, I mean, there's got to be a silver lining. I'm searching for it, and I feel now that I can almost see it, that there's going to be some, that I'm in this transitional zone, and there's going to be a re-emergence. But getting there, exactly as you say, I feel like, I'm kicking and screaming. I have been anyway, of just all these things that I've had to lay down and let go of. And now I'm just kind of, I don't know, it's a bit like a Marie Kondo thing. Like you get a bit like, kind of like, I'm like, now it's gotten quicker because it's like I'm starting to flex this muscle of letting go. So I'm like, it's just more stuff's going out quicker now. And that feels sort of quite good in a way.
Yes, absolutely. So you touched on a really couple of really great things there. Yeah, the more we get used to surrendering, the easier it gets and the better, and the results of surrender are so powerful. The other thing that I've been thinking about with this cycle, because the story of Inanna is also the prototypical myth for all of the underworld myths that have come after. So the story of Persephone and Pluto and Demeter, that's a Greek myth, much more famous in a way than the Inanna myth, because it's the Greek story. It's the same story, it's just different characters. So there's this idea of like the transformation that comes in our lives that has to happen through a death. And I was also listening to a great science podcast on the evolution of flight recently, and they were talking about how there have only been 4 evolutionary phases in the history of Earth that have involved a species evolving to fly. And in every single, or 5 if you include human beings, making planes, etc. But only 4 animal species evolutionary phases. And each time the transformation to flight has required a major loss of some faculty. You can't have it all. To be able to fly, the cost of flying is so great. That's why there have only been 4 evolutionary stages of flight. The cost is so great. The benefits are excellent, but you have to give up hands. You can't have hands and wings. So I think that's kind of really interesting. It's like, well,
Whoa.
what did you say?
I just said, whoa.
It's big. So what we're doing in our lives now is like we are learning to fly, but in order to fly, you have to give up something. We can't have everything. We have to give up some faculty that we value, or some aspect of our lives, some part of life which we value, in order to gain something that we value more. The other thing that you mentioned is looking back to the past. That's the kind of the biggest quality of the Venus retrograde, because it's going backwards and it's looking back at what we value, what we care about, what is most important to us at the level of the heart, what we have come from in terms of our family backgrounds, or our relationship history, or our relationship as children or with children. All of those kind of themes of the past, and that deep, deep diving and inner reflection is a really big part of it as well. So yeah, I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, first of all, I thought I might share a couple of little things. I'll share my screen. We'll get rid of that. That's boring. This is the rose, what's often referred to as the rose of Venus. This was a diagram made in 1773 by James Ferguson, who was an astronomer. And it shows the pattern that Venus makes with the sun from our perspective on Earth. And it's, just so beautiful. And we can see this example here shows where the current conjunctions are happening with the sun. Venus meets the sun out here. We're here. Here's us at Earth, on Earth. There's the sun. Venus is conjunct the sun from our point of view here, obviously very far away. But every time she comes very, very close to Earth, that's when she looks like she's going backwards, because she's as close in her orbit to Earth as she can possibly be. So she looks like she's retrograding. And when she retrogrades, she meets the sun and makes one of these beautiful little curls here. And this is the phase in her cycle that's associated with the descent of Inanna. So yeah, that's also one of the reasons why she has this association with beauty and with art, and the mysterious nature of Venus as well, which is as I said, it's been really kind of dumbed down in contemporary culture that we don't think about Venus as a powerful force, but she really is. So let's have a little look at how this might be playing out in Bo's chart. So if I put up well, first of all, we can see that Bo has Venus here in her third house, which is the house of writing and communication and local community. And it was also in ancient astrology referred to as the house of the goddess. And Venus, of course, is a goddess. And in Capricorn, it's like about building structures and valuing the things that are really kind of important, that last the test of time in terms of community, but also in terms of what you want to write and what you want to put out and share with the world in your local community. And that kind of speaks to me quite loudly about how I think you do those things, Bo.
Right. All I've been doing the last month or two is writing.
Yeah.
It is billowing out of me at a rate of knots.
Amazing.
It's been nuts.
And this is what's so interesting about the Venus cycle, because Venus entered her shadow. We call the shadow the period of time when she was at 12 degrees of Leo, and that's where she's going to retrograde back to. So for all of us, from the 19th of June, any kind of Venusian messages, like topics around love, relationships, money, art, creativity, self-expression, friendships, sisters, but also Leo kind of topics like leadership and children, creativity, artistry, all those kinds of things. Any of those kinds of topics that have been highlighted, we're working deeply, much more. We're going to be working really deeply into those at a real kind of solo and reflective level when she goes retrograde. And I know for you, Bo, that was around about the time when you started writing about where you're at with career stuff. And we look in your chart here, Venus is moving through your 10th house of career. How you show up in the world, how you shine, how people see what you do, how people see you and what you do in the world. That was about the time you were writing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that point was when I was basically I was in this really sort of sticky sort of place, and it's been really difficult to, I guess, manage like some serious health issues with trying to run a business that is really based on me showing up as, 100% full turbo version Bo, which I actually am just not at the moment. And so with no sign of that version of me coming back, I really had to kind of create a little bit of a communication around what the hell was going on. And I sort of published something on Substack, and then I put it on my Instagram account. I wrote it at this time, then put it on my account, and just sort of shared this quite vulnerable, from this vulnerable place, but also just going, you know what, I just can't really fight it anymore. This is where I'm at. And if you don't like it, I'm just happy to say goodbye, because I'm actually just moving in this other direction now. And yeah, actually the response was super warm and really kind. But it was still, it was really pretty, it just felt like a massive turn for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brave thing, and really scary, because it was your whole kind of professional identity for
Totally
a decade.
Yeah.
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 So you can see there in the themes that Venus is about to do a backtrack. She's like, I've been doing this for 10 years, and now I'm going to tell everybody, sorry, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going into my cave to write. And that's really interesting as well, because as I said, Bo has Venus in the house of writing, but Venus is also exalted. She has a very special position in Pisces, which is in the house of creativity and creative expression. So it's where you write creatively. And it's where you have Mercury, which is the planet of writing, which is considered to be in its fall in Pisces. It doesn't usually do, or it's not usually considered to be great there, except what I notice about planets in fall and detriment is that they have to do things differently. They have a unique and interesting take on things. And so this Mercury is getting activated by Venus's movements, also with Saturn here. And as I mentioned, we have at the moment, if we come back to the present, we have Mars moving into an opposition with Saturn tomorrow. And when these two planets come into an opposition with each other, they're the two malefics. And generally, either one of them doing something like full on in the chart can feel really intense. But I like to think of these two planets when they come together in a strong relationship. It's like a double negative. Although it can still be like we can encounter people who are behaving in a domineering, aggressive, tyrannical fashion. That can happen. But there's something about the two negative planets when they come together that they bring out the best in each other, because Mars is like passion, action, drive, like let's do it now, and Saturn's like, hold on, we need to take longer, we need to work over a longer period of time to get this right here. And somehow the two of them together create this great synergy, which is happening in your house of creativity there, on your Mercury opposing this Mars and giving you the kind of the longevity, the push, the passion. You can't, take action on the old life and the old agenda. So you have to go slowly, and it's forcing you to be as creative as you probably would have liked to, but couldn't have been previously. Also, because this is the house of good fortune. So through terrible thing happening, something really fortunate does come about as a result of it. And so when she goes, like tomorrow, Mars and Saturn are opposing each other. And then on Saturday, we have that grand cross, which for you is happening. Here's the Sun at 29 degrees of Cancer in the house of higher thinking, higher learning, publishing. Interestingly, that you have been writing heaps more articles and publishing them on Substack. And then we have Pluto here again in your third house of communication. And Pluto is the planet of really kind of getting to the foundations of hidden material, the things that lie underneath the surface of the consciousness, and relating to psychology or to the layers of history and things that have died and evolved. It's a planet of transformation. It's a planet of fear. It's a planet of the process of transmutation that happens when something dies, and then over time it turns into something like incredibly valuable, like fossil fuels, for example, or tiny little quanta that have the power to annihilate a country, kind of thing. So tiny things that make a big difference, and that's happening on this axis with the nodes in your 12th house and 6th house, the house of work and the house of the 12th house is kind of, I often associate it with writers as well, because it's a place of retreat, and it's a place where we have the unconscious. It's like the depths of the unconscious, where we can sometimes not see what's going on, the blind spots in our lives, and the process of spiritual growth that comes from spending time with oneself and reflecting, that we can actually evolve spiritually. And if we don't do that process of reflection, we can kind of self-sabotage. So this is also being activated this weekend, this really strong cross of communicating, getting to like reflecting on deep aspects of your life, and of your history and of your patterning, of how you deal with struggle, how you deal with work, how you deal with relationships, how you express your ideas, and literally kind of it's a cardinal cross. It's about initiating energies and opportunities that feel really fated and karmic. It's like moving you into a new phase of life, so to speak. Does that make sense for you, Bo?
Yeah, and I think just that idea of the nodes and the square of the this idea of that, I guess that the tension of it, and the moving into something else. Do you think that this in terms of like what this looks like in terms of the south and the north node? I think I remember you saying something about the south node being like the place of, it's like a drain hole or something. I can't remember what you said, but so is the south node the one in that blind spot sort of house? Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. So I was saying to you last week, great memory, Bo, the South Node, because it's been in your house of you and your body, your vitality, your physical health and well-being. It has been like a drain. All your energy has just been going out the drain. It's like there's nothing I can do to restore my energy or to find that sense of, strength and well-being that you know yourself to have. It's just not been possible. And now it's moving into this 12th house, which means that the South Node, not only is it a place of decrease and kind of elimination, but also in Vedic astrology, it was considered to be one of the most spiritual points on the chart, because it's through loss that we evolve spiritually. So when it moves into the 12th house, it's like, wow, now there's this opportunity, one, to maybe get greater clarity around some of the blind spots that might be the subject of your own self undoing. We all have those, right? So it helps you to kind of see them clearly and eliminate maybe any patterns that have been kind of detrimental previously. But also it can bring about situations that remove actual scenarios that could fall into that those kinds of categories. But generally speaking, I would say, because you are writing and you are delving deep into yourself and your history and what you care about, the South Node is also associated with like prolific release of material. Like, I have the South Node in the 5th house, so I make a lot of stuff. Like, it's just like I'm constantly making stuff. Even when I don't have time, I'm like making stuff. So it's like, wow, you'll probably do a lot of writing over the next 18 months. And, your sun is in this 5th house of creativity, and it rules your 10th house of career. So this terrible situation that you have found yourself in, ultimately, and this is kind of resonant with the Venus mysteries, I think, is that it will benefit you in the long run, and it will allow you to kind of do what you really want to do in your heart, like how you really want to show up creatively and professionally. And but it's hard, and you have to be with the difficulty of it as well. And we're not brushing things under the carpet here. We are actually really being with the intensity of those experiences is really powerful and transformative. What are your thoughts about that, Bo?
Yeah, my thoughts are that anything that has been brushed under the carpet that I've been able to sort of move along with is now not an option. It feels like I'm at this point where, it's so deep, it feels like the deepest level on, this kind of tectonic plate level of change. And also, I'm just kind of meeting that depth over and over again, and just going deeper and deeper and deeper all the time. It feels very real, and it feels like it's going to be, it feels like the sort of thing that might happen once in a lifetime, or a decade, or multiple decades, or something like that. That's what this kind of, middle, I don't know, my midlife crisis, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally.
It feels like I can't, none of the ways in which I've used to solve my issues in the past, like the types of strategies and techniques and structures that I would use usually, like none of them work. Yeah. It's like I'm in a fucking new, on a different, like in a different world or planet or universe, where I'm like, well, that doesn't work here. And my, all these superpowers that I've had in the past, it's like, they mean nothing now. Yeah. And so now I've got to work out all this other stuff. So yeah. Do you think we should go out of my natal chart and look at maybe what this sort of, overall Venusian, I love that word. I've never used it before.
Great. First time for many, I hope.
I'm going to try and use it again this weekend. That's my goal. I'll just slip it into something. I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's so Venusian, darling.
I hope you have many Venusian opportunities to use the word Venusian this weekend.
Yes.
I can give you a few little dates. And the first thing is that Sunday, the 23rd, is when Venus turns retrograde. So that's kind of like
so it's coming up.
Yes, she's stationed now. So she is not moving. If you look up in the sky, she's just like not moving right now. But as of Sunday, the 23rd, it will look like she's moving backwards in the sky. Then on Sunday, August the 13th, she's going to conjoin the sun. And this is the whole, every planet's cycle, synodic cycle, is their relationship with the sun. So when she meets with the sun, between the Sunday the 23rd and August the 13th, Venusian topics might feel more intense. We might, be doing a lot of that deep soul searching with a lot of fear maybe and confusion and like bringing up a lot of stuff. That may not absolutely be the case, but it could be. From August the 13th, it will feel like, oh, something's come to clarity here, and suddenly Venusian topics begin to recover and improve. And it's like, oh, okay, right. Okay, we can see a way out of this now. This starts to look more manageable, or we can see a purpose that could evolve from this scenario. And then on Monday, September the 4th, she will station direct, and she'll look like she's moving forward in the sky. When she moves direct, when she stations direct, she'll be conjunct with a lot of fortune, which all we need to know about that is that looks very positive. That looks like, okay, wow, when she goes forward, she's conjunct a very lucky point in the sky, which bodes well for the outcomes of this period, I would say. The other couple of things that are really interesting to note are that, well, she's also going to remain in her shadow until the 8th of October. So we will continue dealing with these issues and these topics. They will continue to unfold for us, and we'll be working them out and working out how to reset, realign, reimagine. All of the retrograde periods are associated with rewords, but with Venus, it's really deep inner reflection, reimagining, reconsidering, rethinking, resting, recreating, doing relationship. All those kinds of things are very Venus retrograde. But also what happened when Venus started slowing down to station, she nearly met with Mars, and all the planets, not only do they have a relationship with the sun, they have a relationship with each other. And whenever they meet, it was considered to be like they're having sex and they have a baby kind of thing. So when two planets meet, they begin a new cycle of possibility. Venus and Mars, they came so close, and then Venus said, yeah, no, I'm going to go back. Thanks anyway. I've got something to do here. So what that means is that we are working on something that we maybe thought we were ready to bring out into the world now, and we're not. It's not ready to come out into the world. They're going to meet on the 22nd of February, 2024, and they're going to meet in the opposite sign of Aquarius, which means between now and 22nd of February, we are working on something that we are ready to bring out to society. Aquarius is the sign of society and of friends and of the world and of making a difference in the world and of doing things that change the future trajectory of society. So all of this deep inner reflection serves that process of delivering something that really does make a qualitative difference in the world in terms of what we're here to express. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I like that. So for me now, I'm just sort of thinking, okay, we've got this 23rd of July to the August 13th. There's like a little bit of something that, a little bit of clarity sort of emerges on the 13th.
Mhm.
Then from there, where is, say again?
Yeah, from the 13th, I would say it gets
Oh yeah, from the 13th. Okay, so I'm not going to wake up on August the 13th and everything's going to be clear.
Well, no, actually on the 13th, hopefully it will actually feel, the 13th could feel like an epiphany, because when the day that the Sun and Venus are exactly conjunct, that's cazimi. That's what we call cazimi, when the planet is in the heart of the Sun and the Sun is in its own sign. So actually the 13th could feel like, whoa, like amazing. But then after that, it's like, then it won't feel, on the 14th, it won't feel quite as amazing. And then it will be in a process of recovery. Yeah.
So, and then I'm also interested in what you mentioned about October and then through to February the 22nd next year, this idea of that being a kind of a period where there's a theme of something that we're working on that we're ready to bring into a public sphere. That sounds interesting to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
The other thing that's related to that is that Mercury is in Leo at the moment too, and Mercury is the planet of communication and the messenger, and so it's kind of giving us messages from Venus, and it's the planet of writing as well. And when Venus, literally, I think it's the day that Venus stations direct, Mercury stations retrograde in its own sign of Virgo, and it also is about to catch Mars, like they're about to have a baby, and then Mercury's like, oh, sorry, man, I'm going to have to go back and redo this as well. This is not ready. So the same thing happens, and then Mercury meets with Mars in March 2024. So where there's this really interesting creative process that's going on, where Venus is really the creative side and Mercury is kind of like the editor in a way, and the magician. And Mercury is the planet that can go to the underworld and come back without being harmed. It's bringing the messages from the subconscious up to the realm of the gods, whereas Venus goes down and she dies. So it's this really interesting dynamic that's going on here. So I do recommend for anyone who is kind of struggling with stuff, like writing is an excellent way to process whatever's coming up here. It feels really, really powerful, like a really powerful tool for getting deep down into this, the really mysterious and magical messages that are coming through, because this is a profound portal of intuitive and initiatory time, and we do get a lot of messages that feel quite magical and mythical. So write down the things that are coming to you. Like I did not last night. I had like a download coming through and I just didn't write it down, and now I can't remember it properly. So write it down.
Just a theme that's been popping up a lot in chats with friends and whatnot has been around instinct and gut instinct at the moment. And and being able to tune in. Like I was thinking of it like it's a bit like a radio station, and we're constantly suppressing our instincts so that we can, be part of this hustle culture and do all the things and tick all the boxes and, but to actually quiet, pause, be able to hear what our gut and our instinct is telling us. I think it's a skill, I think that, we probably all need to do a bit more, but I've just noticed it just popping up a lot when I'm sort of in, I get into this kind of mental state where I'm like all the questions and all, I'm like, I'm finding myself down various rabbit holes, and I'm like, what does my gut, what's my instinct here? And listening to that. And that's been, an interesting, something to just come back to as a center, I guess.
Absolutely. That is so powerful, such a great observation, and so true. And it is about this time where instinct and intuition, gut feeling are really, really strong. And I think also, actually, the part that I can remember of the download that I was getting last night is about a little bit relates to what you're talking about, because I was thinking about Virgo and how, because Virgo is like the do, the work, all the data, all the business, the systems can't stop, like this kind of feeling of almost of exhaustion from the weight of what has to be done that we feel will be judged at some point in time. But Virgo is also a sacred sign that relates to tending the flame of the instinct and of the of the body, and also of something sacred that exists in the everyday. And the more we can kind of, yeah, just kind of create that moment, those moments to just be quiet and tune in, I think that helps a lot of the work we're doing may not be as necessary or as needed, if we can tune into our instincts and our intuition, perhaps. Yeah.
That's interesting. I love that that Virgo has both of those elements, which I would have thought would be somehow oppositional. That systems, data, efficiency, hustle, sort of, and then the quiet that's needed to listen, and the idea of the sacred. Yeah, that's a really beautiful connection point, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, everything has these kind of opposites, but yeah, I think Virgo is very much activated at the moment because Mars is there. So Mars is highlighting the difficult ways that we do Virgo, which is, yeah, that real kind of intensity and the conflict inside ourselves, and the weight of judgment we carry about what we think we should be doing and how we're going to be judged if we do it wrong, and how we should be doing more and how we're not enough. And
it's just basically you just saying what my inner brain is mostly just saying. Will be judged, you need to do more, that's not enough.
Exactly. And we're not alone. It's a whole bunch of us. Yeah. So let's tend to the inner flame, because also, Venus, the interesting thing, I'm just going to say, we thought this was going to be a 15-minute session of sharing, but of course,
there's no such thing as 15 minutes between you and I. That
no,
was a
there is
stupid
not.
thing to say. It's never going to happen.
Never going to happen. But the last little chapter about this Venus cycle that comes back into Virgo is that when Venus finally leaves Leo, she leaves her shadow on October 8, 28 degrees of Leo, 29 degrees of Leo on October 8. And then on October 9, she moves into Virgo. And in Virgo, Venus is considered to be in her fall. She's not happy there. And the reason she's not happy there is because Venus is the goddess of, like, let's lie around on the couch and eat biscuits while we watch something awesome on the TV. And Virgo is like, I have to do the work because they're going to judge me. I'm going to die if I don't get this at a really high standard. So Venus struggles there. And all of this work that we're doing internally, that's like kind of non-work in a way. It's like the work of surrender, the work of inner reflection and listening, the work of creative reimagining and reset in, artistic and relational kind of contexts. Then when we get into Virgo, then it's like, okay, so how do we actually make this work then? How do we do this in a technical fashion? Yeah. So, and then she'll be a month in Virgo. So we'll really be learning how to tend that sacred flame in a way that hopefully gives us a new way of doing the Virgo and the Venus. We will have to do some work, but hopefully we can do it in a new way where we're tending tending the flame is really part of the work that we're doing.
Yeah. I've been thinking about work, why I can't rest and recover and all of those sorts of things. And I've been thinking about, if I consider it work, but inner work, I'll be able to do it because I've got that, and I also have to acknowledge that I grew up with a mum and stepmom, both Virgos, both high power, high achieving. You never lay down. You definitely don't. Like, laying down any type of rest is like a total no-no.
Oh my
Systems, organization, outcomes, finishing things, like, it's just that. So now I'm like, okay, when I do all these things, as you're saying, that start with which I loved, that is work. It's like when you close your eyes, actually there's so many cogs, a bit like that idea of my friend who's a yoga teacher told me about Shavasana. She's like, because I'm like, I fucking hate Shavasana. I hate that.
It's lying down.
I just want to, like, I'm just do all these sort of activities. And she's like, think of it like digestion. So if you're doing yoga and then you, if you don't then do shavasana at the end, it's like you're not assimilating and amalgamating and merging with all of the movements that you've just done. And so there, it is work. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so it's work.
Relax, it's work.
I mean, the things I do to trick myself, it's ridiculous.
We all do that.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say something, I was thinking about something that you just mentioned and then I got lost. I can't remember what it was, about I think it was about the work of rest, but I can't remember now. It's gone. But yeah, it is, I think, it's so true. This is the work that we have to do. It's this inner work, the work of quietening down. And really, if we commit to that, the possibility is that what emerges through this process is something very, very precious, very rare, very valuable, because it comes back to that idea of like transformation, power, and riches as well. We have to lose something, which is the work, and this idea of like self-validation that we get through that kind of work, and just throwing it off. Reversals is what, this kind of thing of like what we expect is the way to do it under the Venus retrograde. It's like, well, actually, maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe it's actually the opposite of that. And then if we do that and we really commit to it, really surrender to it, what could come through could be just, really quite special, I think. And I am certainly feeling the potential of that myself, which is why I feel more kind of excited about this Venus retrograde in a way, even though it could contain some really intense triggers or deep feelings that we have to tend to really, with compassion. In fact, that's the last, I keep saying that's the last thing I'm going to mention. This will be one of the last things that I mention at least. One of the key moral kind of themes of the story of Inanna is that when we confront maybe the judgment, or we are judged, or we are experiencing some kind of conflict with someone or whatever, the way to handle it is to show it compassion. When Inanna is killed, her sister wants her dead, but she's brought back to life because these mythical beings come and show her sister Ereshkigal compassion. And just the showing of compassion, Ereshkigal changes her mind and promises them the body of Inanna, who they bring back to life. So there's this showing tender compassion to ourselves when the really hard things come up from the unconscious, from the underworld of our own psyches, or when we're engaging with someone perhaps very difficult. Some people may have that in this Venus cycle, dealing with a really difficult, problematic ex, or dealing with someone who's betrayed them, or, those kinds of storylines can appear. Our superpower is to show compassion in some kind. And the thing in the story that's so interesting is that the beings that show her compassion, they don't really feel compassion for her genuinely. They don't have any feelings. They're told to go to her and repeat her laments back to her. So she says, oh, my poor liver, oh, my poor lungs, oh, my poor belly, oh, my poor, and they say, oh, your poor belly, oh, your poor lungs. And just repeating back what she's saying in her distress, she's like, who are you? Are you gods? Are you gods? I will give you anything. You ask for, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. And they say, we don't want it, just give us Inanna. And she's like, oh God, all right. So just showing ourselves and others compassion, or just repeating back to them the nature of their suffering, can be really transformative and rewarding. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Me too.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful, Mon. Thank you for wrapping that story up, the Venusian story, into what's happening now, what's happening for me, what's happening for everyone.
I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. You're better than all the therapists.
So are you.
I don't need to go and see any other therapists. I just need to talk to you and I'm good. All right. Talk to you soon, Mono. Lots of love. Thank you so much.
Ciao. See everyone. Bye. Oops. I haven't even stopped.